Okay, so let's be real. There are so many headlines flying around, it's almost impossible to figure out where the next big crisis is actually going to pop up. So today, we're going to use a special tool to get ahead of the curve. We're building a forecast for the coming month to see which hotspots really need our attention.
Right? I mean, it's a massive challenge. We're just flooded with info 24/7. So how do you separate the actual signal from all that noise? How can we spot those warning signs, before a conflict just completely explodes and takes over the news cycle?
Well, that's where this really cool tool called Crisis Watch comes in. Think of it like a global conflict radar. It's an early warning system that's constantly tracking over 70 potential crisis spots every single month, all with the goal of helping prevent deadly violence. So let's see what that radar is pinging for February 2026.
All right, let's jump right into the most urgent stuff. These are the flashing red lights, the places where the risk of things getting worse is, well, it's highest right now.
So for this month, February 2026, Crisis Watch has flagged 3 key situations where things could really deteriorate.
First up on that list is Iran.
And the situation there is just incredibly volatile. You've got the government cracking down violently on nationwide protests, reportedly killing thousands. Then, on top of that, the U.S. is threatening direct military intervention. I mean, look at the language here. The specter of a new war. That is chilling. It really shows you just how close this whole thing is to blowing up into a massive regional catastrophe, unless they can find some kind of diplomatic way out.
Okay, next up, we're turning our attention to South Asia. Specifically, we're looking at Bangladesh. The country is really on edge with elections coming up on February 12th. We're already seeing politically motivated killings, and there are real fears that there's going to be more violence, especially targeting voters and minority groups. But here's the key thing. It's not just about what happens on election day, it's about what happens after. As it says right here, if the outcome is disputed, this could easily just spiral into a huge political crisis.
And the third major risk alert for the month is Haiti.
This one is a classic case of instability just creating even more danger. So, the Transitional Government's authority, it's set to expire on February 7th, and there's really been very little progress on what comes next. The danger, and it's captured perfectly here, is that you get a power vacuum. And who loves a power vacuum? Gangs. The situation is just ripe for gangs to exploit. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. Amidst all of these risks, Crisis Watch has also identified one spot, just one, where there's a genuine chance, a real opportunity to actually make progress on peace this month.
And believe it or not, that one opportunity is in Syria. I know, right? After this really dramatic and deadly confrontation between the government and Kurdish-led forces, something totally unexpected happened. Out of all that violence, on January 30th, the two sides actually struck a new deal. Now, it's fragile, for sure, but it is a very real chance to build some kind of lasting peace.
But, and there's a but, that one little glimmer of hope in Syria is kind of set against a much more concerning backdrop. When we look back at last month, at January, Crisis Watch shows us that a lot of other places around the world actually got significantly worse. Okay, so let's run through them. First, South Sudan. A major offensive by opposition forces saw them making these lightning-fast advances. The result? Hundreds of thousands of people displaced, and the country's now dangerously close to an all-out civil war.
Then you've got Ethiopia. Fresh clashes just erupted in the Tigray region. And this fighting has brought back all those fears of a return to that absolutely devastating war that tore the north of the country apart.
Over in Uganda, the recent presidential election, a real source of instability. The whole thing was just marred by a deadly crackdown on the opposition. They shut down the internet across the whole country, and there were allegations of vote rigging everywhere.
And in Niger, wow. Militants launched this incredibly brazen, unprecedented assault right on the international airport in the capital. Now, this wasn't just some random attack. They were hitting a major nerve center for the military regime.
Then we have Venezuela, and this is a stunning one. A dramatic military raid by U.S. forces actually ended with the capture of the country's president, and after that, Washington announced it's going to directly oversee the country's management. I mean, the geopolitical implications of that are just huge.
And look, Iran is back on this list too. That same violent crackdown that has it on the watch list for February, well, that whole situation was getting much, much worse all through January.
And Syria, interestingly, is also on the deteriorated list, even with that new peace deal. And this just shows you how complicated these conflict zones are, right? Just because you have one step towards peace in one area doesn't mean the whole country is suddenly doing better.
So you add all that up, that's 7 situations that got significantly worse in just 1 month. It really paints a picture of a world where instability is unfortunately on the rise.
So what's the big takeaway here? I mean, why bother tracking all this so closely? Does it even matter?
Of course it matters. It matters because it gives us focus. In a world that feels totally chaotic, tracking this stuff systematically helps us cut through the noise. It lets us pinpoint the really acute risks, like in Iran and Haiti. It helps us find those super rare but absolutely vital chances for peace, like we saw in Syria. And it helps us see the bigger picture, the broader trends, like the fact that 7 places got worse last month. Basically, it shows us exactly where we need to be paying attention and where action is needed most.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. Look, an early warning is great. It's vital, but it's not the same thing as early action. Knowing where the fires are about to start, well, that's the first step, but actually getting there in time to put them out, that's a whole other challenge.